She saved his son without hesitation. But when he looked into her eyes, he saw the face of a woman who died years ago and wore a charm only she could have. Who was she, and what secret had she unknowingly carried into his arms that day? Before we dive into this unforgettable journey, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? If stories about love, sacrifice, and second chances speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we're bringing you another powerful story you won't want to miss. The city moved like a machine, honking horns, flashing lights, and a blur of hurried footsteps. Amara Reyes adjusted the strap of her worn canvas bag as she exited the bookstore where she worked part-time. Her shift had been long and her feet ached, but she welcomed the walk. It was the only time she could breathe without the musty smell of used paper and old receipts clouding her thoughts. Raindrops clung to the air, not quite falling, but enough to make the sidewalk shimmer under the early evening glow. Just as Amara passed the intersection of 5th and Madison, her attention snapped toward the shriek of a child. A small boy, no more than 5, had slipped from his nanny's grip and was chasing a red balloon that bounced toward oncoming traffic. There was no time to think. Amara dropped her bag, sprinted past the curb, and lunged forward as a delivery truck came barreling down the lane. Tires screeched, the balloon popped, people gasped, but it was Amara who emerged from the chaos, knees scraped, arms wrapped tightly around the trembling boy. Her heart thundered in her chest as she whispered reassurances to calm his cries. The crowd slowly parted as a tall man pushed through, panic etched into every line of his face. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened, his usually composed demeanor unraveling by the second. "Ethan!" he cried, voice breaking. The boy turned his head. "Daddy!" Amara looked up, still holding the child, and met his father's eyes. Nicholas Vance froze. For a moment, time collapsed. He wasn't standing on a rainy New York street. He was back in the alley, years ago, smoke thick around him, a wall collapsing, and a stranger's hand pulling him to safety. The woman who had risked her life to save his had vanished before he could ever thank her. But he remembered her face, even after all this time. It was her. It was this woman. Amara slowly stood, her eyes cautious, and handed the boy Ethan back into Nicholas's arms. "He's okay," she said gently, "just scared." Nicholas could barely find words. What's your name?" She hesitated. "Amara." His heart pounded. It couldn't be a coincidence. That name, that face. Ethan clung to his father, sniffling, but his gaze lingered on Amara with childlike awe. "She caught me, Daddy, like a superhero." Amara smiled faintly. "Just lucky timing." Nicholas blinked hard. No, this isn't just timing." He looked down at the boy's small backpack, hanging loose from one strap. As Amara moved to retrieve it, she noticed something sticking out of the front pocket. She opened it to place the strap inside, and froze. There, tangled between a pack of crayons and a tiny blue notebook, was a silver charm. A tiny phoenix. Amara gently pulled it out and examined it, confused. "This isn't mine." Nicholas stepped forward, his breath hitched as he reached for the charm, his fingers trembling. "Where did you get this?" Amara shrugged. "It was in his bag. I don't know." Nicholas stared at the charm like it was haunted. I gave this to someone, years ago, during a fire. She saved my life. Then she disappeared. And now?" His eyes locked on hers again. And in that moment, Amara felt the ground shift beneath her. Amara took a cautious step back. The intensity in Nicholas's eyes was too much, too sudden. "You must be mistaken," she said, slipping the charm into his open hand. "Maybe it was just a gift passed down or something your son picked up." But Nicholas wasn't convinced. "No, this charm, I had one made, just one, custom etched. Look." He flipped the phoenix to reveal tiny initials carved in silver. "NV." His voice lowered. "I gave it to her because she said she believed people could rise again from their ashes. That fire changed my life, and so did she. And you look just like her." Amara's breath caught in her throat. She remembered the fire, not because she had saved anyone, but because she had barely escaped herself. She had been working late at a catering gig near the old Easton warehouse when the flames broke out. She hadn't told anyone about pulling someone out, hadn't thought it mattered, just instinct, just humanity. She hadn't stayed to She hadn't known he remembered her. "I was there," she admitted softly. "But I didn't know who you were. I never expected to see you again." Nicholas stepped closer, the chaos of the street slowly fading behind them. "Why didn't you say anything? Why disappear?" Amara's eyes dropped. "Because I've lived my life invisible, Mr. Vance. People like you don't notice people like me. That night was never supposed to follow me into the rest of my life." He blinked, visibly taken aback. "You're wrong about that." Ethan peeked up from behind his father's leg. "Daddy, is she coming with us?" Amara smiled gently. "No, sweetie. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." The boy pouted, then reached up to hand her a sticker from his notebook. "It's a thank you." Amara took it, touched. A glittering gold star. She had no idea why her throat felt tight. Nicholas cleared his throat. "At least let me buy you dinner. It's the least I can do for saving my son. And for saving me." She hesitated. "It's not charity, it's gratitude, and maybe a little curiosity," he said. "I don't believe in coincidences, Amara. I never have." Still unsure, she finally nodded. "Okay. Just dinner." A black SUV pulled up again to the curb, and Nicholas opened the back door for Ethan, who climbed in easily, still beaming at Amara like she was a fairy tale. Nicholas turned back to her. "I'll send a car. 6:30? She gave a small nod. "Good," he said, and for a second, the confident businessman softened. "Thank you, Amara, for more than you know." She stood there in the rain as the car drove away, her clothes still damp, her fingers still holding the golden star sticker, and her chest filled with something warm and terrifying all at once. Because for the first time in years, someone had remembered her. Not as a background shadow or a name on a receipt, but as a moment that mattered. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for what that might mean. Here, in Nicholas Vance's penthouse's office, was unusually still. The city lights shimmered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, but his focus was on the photograph he held in his hand, the one he'd found tucked beneath his son's booster seat after Amara had returned the backpack. The photograph showed Amara with another young woman, both smiling warmly, standing in front of what looked like a small, but it wasn't the background that caught Nicholas's breath. It was the woman beside Amara. She was the exact image of the girl who had pulled him from the flames all those years ago. Celeste. Her name had been a whisper of memory ever since the fire, a name etched into his bones, spoken only once, before she disappeared without a trace. He'd tried to find her afterward, offering rewards, posting in community boards, hiring private investigators, but no one could find any trace of the girl who saved his life. It was as if she'd vanished into the smoke with the flames that nearly took him. And now this, a photograph linking her to a woman he'd only just met. Nicholas enlarged the photo with trembling fingers. There was no mistake. The tilt of her chin, the hazel eyes, the birthmark near her collarbone, he remembered it all. The way she'd covered his body with her own in the collapsing hallway, whispering that he'd be okay. She'd been barely older than a teenager, but her bravery had outshone any adult he'd ever known. He had to know more. The next morning, Nicholas returned to the modest bookstore tucked between a laundromat and a bakery, the same place from the photo. He stepped inside, the familiar scent of old paper and ink curling around him like a comfort. Amara stood behind the counter, placing books back on a shelf, her fingers careful, her expression distant. She froze when she saw him. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Nicholas said quietly, raising both hands. I found this." He placed the photograph on the counter. Amara's breath hitched. Slowly, she lowered her eyes to the image. "Where did you get this?" "A drive." "You dropped it, in the rush yesterday?" Silence stretched between them, fragile as glass. Amara looked up again, her eyes glossy. "You knew her, didn't you?" Nicholas nodded once. "She saved my life. During the fire in the Briar Street apartment building. I never forgot her. I never could." Amara swallowed hard, the memory flickering behind her eyes like an old film. That was my sister, Celeste. Nicholas felt his heart clench. She's gone? A long pause. Then Amara nodded. Yes, she died, not long after that night. He sat down on a nearby stool, stunned. What happened? Amara looked down at her hands. That fire changed everything. She was never the same after it. She started keeping secrets. She stopped going to school. Then one night, she just disappeared. A week later, they found her body near the river. The police said it was an accident, but I never believed them. Nicholas's jaw tightened. She saved me. She was a hero. She never believed that, Amara whispered. She thought no one remembered. He stared at her, something burning behind his eyes. I did. Amara stepped into the back room and returned with a small tin box. She placed it on the counter and opened it gently. Inside were Celeste's belongings: an old library card, a pair of earrings, and a worn silver charm. The same charm that had been inside Nicholas's son's backpack. He picked it up slowly. The weight was familiar, but as he turned it over, he noticed something he'd never seen before. A faint seam near the edge. Carefully, he pressed it. The charm opened. Tucked inside, yellowed with time, was a tightly folded piece of paper. Nicholas opened it with trembling fingers and froze. The handwriting was delicate, slanted, and unmistakably feminine. Nicholas scanned the page, his pulse pounding in his ears as each word cut through the years like thunder through silence. To the man I saved. If you're reading this, then fate gave us another chance. I never meant to disappear, but some truths are heavier than fire. If something happens to me, remember, it wasn't an accident. I was followed. I knew something I never should have seen. Protect the child. The truth is in the ledger. Nicholas read it again and again. The words weren't just a message, they were a warning. He looked up. Did Celeste ever talk about someone following her? Anyone threatening her? Amara shook her head slowly, her face pale. She was scared near the end. She stopped talking to friends, quit her part-time job, but she never told me why. Nicholas' mind spun. He thought of the fire, of the sudden disappearance, of this note that had been sealed away for years. Do you know what she meant by the ledger? Amara hesitated. There was a journal she used to keep. She wrote in it every night, but after she vanished, it was gone. I searched for it, but... Nicholas rose from the stool, still holding the charm. Amara, this wasn't just about a fire. Your sister may have uncovered something dangerous, and someone made sure her story ended before it could begin. Amara crossed her arms tightly over her chest. That charm was in the backpack yesterday. Why now? He stared at her, the realization crashing over him like a wave. Whoever left it there, they wanted me to find it, or they wanted you to find it. She stepped back. Why me? Nicholas's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. Because you're the only family Celeste had left. Maybe she knew, someday, you'd be strong enough to finish what she started. Amara sank into the nearest chair, her breath shaky. I'm just a clerk at a bookstore. Nicholas said, kneeling beside her. You're the sister of a girl who gave her life to save mine. And you might be the only person who can help uncover why she died. Silence filled the shop, thick with the weight of the past. Best female officer quoted. She always thought, I failed results, braver, always protecting me. I thought if I could just forget that night, maybe I could move on. Nicholas looked at her gently. She didn't die so you would forget. Maybe she died hoping one day someone would remember. Marari's hands clenched at her sides. If we do this, we do it right. No police, at least not yet. I want answers before someone buries them again. Nicholas nodded. Agreed, but we need to start somewhere. Do you still have anything of hers? Amara paused. There was one thing, her old backpack. I kept it in a trunk. I haven't looked inside it in years. To start there. A tense hour later, they sat in the back room of Amara's small apartment, the faded backpack between them. Inside were scribbled notes, movie ticket stubs, and, At the very bottom, wedged beneath a torn corner, was a flash drive. Amara's hand trembled as she pulled it out. "Abel," she murmured. "No password. Just this." Nicholas took out his phone and connected the drive with an adapter. A single folder popped open. Inside were scanned documents, bank transfers, receipts, contracts tied to a charity Nicholas had once invested in and quietly backed away from after rumors of financial misconduct. But there was more. Emails between people he didn't recognize, encrypted files, lists of account numbers. His breath left him. Celeste was digging into something huge. This charity, it was a front, and someone knew. Amara looked at him, shaken. So she was killed for this. He closed the folder, eyes burning. And now we know, which means someone else might know we're looking. A shadow fell across the window. Nicholas stood abruptly, glancing outside. A car idled across the street. Tinted windows. No movement. "Stay inside," he told Amara quietly. "Keep the drive hidden." "Where are you going?" He turned back to her with fire in his voice, "To find out who tried to erase her, and make sure they never touch you." As he stepped out into the night, the charm in his hand gleamed under the streetlight, proof that the past was never really buried, just waiting for the right person to dig it back up. And Amara, still clutching her sister's photograph, knew this was only the beginning. The wind howled as Nicholas stood in front of the massive iron gates of the Vance estate. It had been years since he last stepped onto the grounds, years since he'd willingly faced the man who raised him more like a rival than a son. But the note hidden in the charm and the documents from the flash drive made one thing clear. Celeste's disappearance wasn't just an accident, it had roots that led straight back to this house. Inside, the marble floors still gleamed under cold chandeliers, and silence draped over every hallway like a shroud. A butler opened the door to the study, revealing Edward Vance, sitting behind a glass desk with a crystal decanter of scotch, already half empty. "Well," Edward muttered, not looking up, "the prodigal son returns." Nicholas didn't bother with greetings. He held up the printed message from Celeste. "Do you recognize this handwriting?" Edward barely blinked. Of course, that was Celeste. "Teacher." "You knew her?" Nicholas demanded. A pause. Then Edward exhaled, setting down his glass. "She worked here, years ago, house staff. She was bright, too kind for her own good. She saved my life in a fire, and then she disappeared." Nicola's voice cracked with restrained fury. "What happened to her, Dad?" Edward looked away. "She got involved with something she shouldn't have." Nicholas stepped closer, his fists clenched. "What does that mean?" Edward stood slowly. "She found out something about one of our partners, money laundering through a charitable front. She was young, thought exposing it would change everything, but this family doesn't survive on good intentions. I made her leave, gave her money to disappear. I thought she'd be safer that way. I forced her out," Nicholas said bitterly. "I protected her," Edward said, slamming a hand on the desk. "The people she angered weren't the kind you negotiate with." Nicola's eyes darkened. "She ended up dead." Edward froze. The silence said enough. "She's gone," Nicholas said, his voice low. "And I just found a note saying she knew she was being followed." Edward reached for his drink. "If you're smart, you'll drop this. Let the past rot with its—" Nicholas stepped back. "No, you let an innocent girl take the fall, and you let me believe she'd just walked away." Without another word, he turned and left the room. Across town, Amara stepped out of her small bookstore, the bell above the door jingling behind her. She had barely locked the door when a soft voice called out from the shadows. "Miss?" Startled, she turned to see an older woman, wrinkled, dressed in modest clothes, a scarf wrapped tightly around her graying hair. "She used to work for the Vance family. As a maid," the woman said gently. "You look just like her." Amara's breath caught. "Celeste?" The woman nodded. "She was lovely, brave, but she got too close to something, and Mr. Vance's people made sure she was gone before she could open her mouth." Tears threatened Amara's voice. She didn't deserve that. "You." She didn't, the maid agreed, eyes sharp. But some names carry protection. Yours doesn't. Amara blinked. The woman stepped closer. You should leave it alone. The Vances bury what they don't want exposed. They buried her. Don't let them do the same to you. Before Amara could respond, the woman was gone, vanishing into the night like a shadow never meant to be seen. She stood frozen for a long while, and yet, deep in her chest, something refused to be afraid. Later that night, Nicholas called Amara. "Confronted my father," he said. "He admitted it, the cover-up, the money, forcing Celeste out." Amara swallowed hard. She wasn't crazy. She knew what she saw. Nicholas nodded slowly, then added, "And there's more. I found something else at the estate, in the back of the library's safe." He held up a sealed envelope, the handwriting unmistakably hers. It was labeled in careful, elegant script. For him. Nicholas stared at the envelope in his hands for a long moment before slowly breaking the seal. The paper inside was aged, the ink slightly faded, but every word carried the weight of truth she had never gotten to speak aloud. "If you're reading this, it means you didn't forget me, and that means everything. I never meant to disappear without a goodbye, Nicholas, but your father gave me no choice. I saw something I wasn't supposed to, something dangerous. They said if I stayed, I'd be arrested or worse. I wanted to stay for you, but I couldn't risk dragging you into it. I was just a girl who happened to love you, and I know I had no right. You were going to change the world. I was just part of a house that polished the mirrors. But you treated me like I was someone real. That night in the fire, when I pulled you out, I wasn't thinking. I just saw you trapped and couldn't bear the thought of losing you. I still can't. If this letter ever finds you, remember me not as the girl who vanished, but as the one who loved you enough to walk away." Nicholas sat motionless, the words slicing through years of silence. He'd spent so long wondering if he had imagined her care, her warmth, wondering if the fire had left him with ghost memories, but this letter made it all real. She had loved him, and someone had made her disappear to keep her silent. He folded the letter with care, almost reverently, and placed it back into the envelope. The next day, Amara stood behind the counter of her bookstore, trying to concentrate on shelving returns, but her thoughts were far away. She turned suddenly when the bell jingled. Nicholas stood there, rain soaking his coat, the envelope in his hand. "Read it," he said simply. Her eyes widened. "She never stopped loving you," Amara whispered. "He never stopped protecting me," Nicholas added, "even when she was the one who needed protection most." They sat down, side by side, and Amara listened as Nicholas recounted every word of Celeste's letter. When he finished, they sat in silence. There were no right things to say, only the truth that hovered between them like a fragile truce. "I need to know what happened," Nicholas said at last. "Really happened?" "Too," Amara replied. That night, they drove back to the estate together. Nicholas retrieved an old, dust-covered lockbox from a storage room that had belonged to his mother before she passed. He had never gone through it. Inside were photographs, receipts, and handwritten journals. As they sifted through the contents, Amara's hand froze on a faded Polaroid. Celeste, young and smiling, standing beside a man Amara had never seen. Nicholas stared at the photo. "That's Elijah Grant, my father's former partner. He was the one accused of fraud. Disappeared after the fire." "This is," Amara said, lifting a crumpled envelope from the bottom of the box. "Has his name on it. It's postmarked 3 days before Celeste vanished." They opened it together. Inside was a short, rushed message. "Celeste, I know what you found. They're coming for you. Don't trust anyone, especially not Edward." Nicholas's hands trembled. She wasn't just collateral damage, she was hunted. Outside the house, Amara heard a sharp knock on the front door. She opened it cautiously, only to find a package wrapped in brown paper. No note, no sender. She brought it inside. Nicholas cut the string. Inside were torn pages from a diary, Celeste's handwriting again. Some pages were burned around the edges, others intact. One sentence stood out. "Something happens to me, find Amara. She'll be the one who tells the rest of the story." Tara's voice shook as she read the line. She knew she wouldn't make it. She left the truth for us to find. Nicholas nodded. "And now we finish what she started." Just then, Nicholas's phone vibrated. A restricted number. He answered, and a distorted voice spoke one line before hanging up. "Stop digging, or you'll bury more than a memory." Nicholas and Amara exchanged a glance, but neither of them backed down. For Celeste, the story would not stay buried. Nicholas sat at the edge of his study chair, the envelope trembling in his fingers. The edges were frayed with time, but the handwriting was unmistakably hers. She led him for the last words. He broke the seal and slowly unfolded the letter, already bracing himself for the weight of her words. "As this ever finds you, Nicholas, please know, I never meant to disappear without goodbye. I was pregnant when I was let go. I tried to come back, but your father's threats were louder than my heart. I didn't want to ruin your name. I loved you. I wanted our child to grow up safe, even if it meant far from you." Nicholas' breath caught in his throat. Pregnant? Celeste had been carrying his child? He read on, absorbing every word, every apology, every shattered hope. By the end, he was gripping the paper with both hands, eyes glassy. His voice was barely a whisper when he said, "She was going to tell me." That evening, Nicholas met Amara at a quiet cafe near the river. She noticed the letter tucked into his jacket pocket and the storm in his eyes. He slid the paper across the table in silence. She read it slowly. When she looked up, her expression held no surprise, just sorrow. "I knew," she said quietly. "Celeste confided in me after she left the estate. She didn't know what to do, and I was just 17. Nicholas leaned forward, his voice gravelly. "She was going to have my child. What happened?" Amara hesitated, then nodded. "She gave birth, a baby boy, but after Celeste passed, he was taken. I never found out by whom." Nicholas's hands curled into fists. "Taken? Who would—" Amara reached into her bag and pulled out a faded folder. "I've spent years trying to trace him. This is all I've found. Partial records, conflicting adoption reports, but one name keeps coming up. A private orphanage, Moncrest Haven. It was shut down 3 years ago." He took the folder and scanned the pages. Montrest. That name did stir something. His father once donated to that place. Nicholas' voice dropped. "If my father had anything to do with this—" Amara reached for his hand. "Let's just find the truth, for Celeste, and for the boy." They drove to Moncrest the next morning. The gates were rusted, the main building shuttered. Still, Nicholas knew people who made a few calls. An old caretaker met them by the back entrance. Her name was Hetty, and her expression shifted the moment she saw Amara. "You're Celeste's sister," Hetty said, her voice thin. "I always wondered if someone would come." Nicholas stepped forward. "Do you remember a baby boy placed here, about 16 years ago?" Hetty frowned, thinking. "We had many children, but yes, there was one. No name given, just a silver charm tucked into his blanket." Amara gasped. "The charm, Celeste always wore one." Hetty nodded. "The boy was sickly at first, but strong-willed, always quiet. He was adopted, but there was something strange. The file disappeared from our system. When the authorities came during the audit, his name wasn't listed anymore." Nicola's eyes narrowed. "Can you find anything else? Anything at all?" Hetty disappeared into the back for several long minutes. She returned with a dusty box and a thin file inside. She placed it gently into Nicholas's hands. "This is all I could salvage when they shut us down." Inside was a photocopy of an old medical report. Nicholas flipped through it until his hands froze. Toward the end, there it was, printed at the bottom. "Father, Nicholas Vance." His breath left him in a slow, stunned exhale. Amara's fingers covered her mouth. Nicholas stared at the name typed in black ink as if seeing his own reflection for the first time. It wasn't a speculation anymore. It was fact. Somewhere out there, his son was alive. His voice was barely audible. "He's real, all these years." Amara's eyes shimmered. Celeste wasn't lying. She didn't want to hurt you. She just didn't have a choice. Nicholas closed the file slowly, the weight of the years pressing down on him like a tide. And now, someone made that child disappear. They erased his existence. Intentionally. Amara nodded. Someone with access, power, and motive. His jaw clenched. My father? Back in the car, Nicholas was silent, fingers tapping the folder on his lap. Amara finally broke the silence. What will you do now? Find him, he said simply. And if my father had anything to do with covering up his existence, he'll answer for it. They returned to Nicholas's estate just as the sky dimmed. Inside, Amara excused herself to check on Nicholas's son, Elliot, who had taken to her presence like sunlight. As she passed the boy's room, she paused. A drawing sat on his table. 3 stick figures, 2 adults and a child, and above it, a scrawled name. Me and Mama and Nick. Her throat tightened. Elliot didn't know who the third person was, only that he saw her now as someone safe, someone warm. Downstairs, Nicholas made a call to a private investigator. I want every adoption connected to Moncrist tracked, especially those between 15 and 17 years ago. Use my name, use my money. I want every stone turned. After the call, he stepped into the study and opened a locked drawer. He pulled out an old photograph. Celeste, in the garden of the estate, holding a book, smiling shyly. His thumb brushed over the image. She tried to reach me, he whispered, and I failed her. A knock on the door startled him. Amara stood there, hesitant. There's something else. I didn't tell you everything. Nicholas looked up, a mixture of worry and curiosity in his eyes. Go on. Amara stepped in and closed the door softly behind her. Before she died, Celeste told me that if anything ever happened to her, I should protect the child. But I couldn't. The day she died, he was gone. Anila's voice was gentle. That wasn't your fault. Her voice broke. Her voice broke. I've spent so many years wondering if I could have done more. I searched orphanages, shelters. I looked into private clinics, thinking maybe someone placed him there. Nicholas crossed the room and took her hand. You did more than anyone else, and now we're not alone in this. We'll find him, Amara, together. She nodded, wiping a tear. And if he's out there, do you think he'll want to know who you are? Nicholas' gaze turned distant. I don't know, but he deserves the truth. As night fell over the city, the charm Celeste once wore sat quietly between them on the desk. Its tiny hinge opened, revealing not just the note, but a miniature picture folded inside. It was worn, but Nicholas could just make out Celeste holding a newborn in a white blanket. A sudden knock came at the door again. This time it was the butler, holding a manila envelope. Sir, this arrived, marked urgent, dropped off by someone who didn't leave a name. Nicholas took the envelope cautiously. Inside was another file, more adoption paperwork, medical scans, a recent photo, and then the final blow, the boy's name, Lucas, age 16, adopted by a family overseas, now missing. Nicholas gripped the photo. The boy's eyes, they were his. Amara whispered behind him, We're running out of time. He nodded, voice cold and sure. Then we start tonight. The morning sun filtered through the frosted windows of the social worker's office as Clara sat between Nicholas and Amara, her small hands folded tightly in her lap. She hadn't spoken much since the DNA confirmation. She seemed hesitant, like a bird ready to fly at the first sudden movement. But when Amara gently reached for her hand, Clara didn't pull away. She used to hum to me, Clara finally said, her voice low. The woman in my dreams, the song was always the same. Amara smiled softly. Celeste, that was your mother's lullaby. Clara nodded, her chin quivering. I believed she was real, even when they said she wasn't. Nicholas felt something twist in his chest. She was very real, and she loved you with everything she had. Later that afternoon, Nicholas took Clara to his penthouse for the first time. She wandered the rooms with wide eyes, amazed but reserved. Amara joined them for dinner, and it was there, over warm plates of pasta, that Clara opened up again. Favorite color is seafoam green, and I like stars, she said quietly, twirling noodles with her fork. Nicholas grinned. I'll have to get you a telescope. She smiled, then turned to Amara. Can I sit beside you? Amara nodded, her heart aching with a love that had bloomed so quickly it startled her. When Clara rested her head on Amara's shoulder afterward, Nicholas realized something profound. His daughter had instinctively chosen her guardian heart first. Over the next week, Nicholas worked tirelessly with his legal team to prepare for the guardianship petition. Amara supported him every step of the way, helping Clara adjust to her new routine, guiding her through unfamiliar hallways and big city noise with a protective warmth that never felt forced. Then the challenge came. At the first court hearing, a surprise objection was filed by none other than Nicholas's uncle, Malcolm Vance, a man who hadn't been in contact with Nicholas in over a decade, but who now claimed that he should be Clara's legal guardian due to family estate succession. Nicholas' jaw clenched. This is about control. He doesn't care about Clara. Wants her trust fund and the Vance name under his thumb, Amara said sharply. Her lawyer agreed. He's claiming her birthright entitles him to shape her future. If he proves Nicholas is emotionally compromised, he could delay custody indefinitely. In the courtroom, Clara sat with Amara, her legs swinging beneath the bench. Malcolm's lawyers argued that Nicholas's past trauma made him unstable. They pointed to the years he spent overseas, the therapy he'd undergone, and even pulled out a tabloid article from years ago claiming he was mentally unfit after his father's public scandal. But Nicholas stood calmly. I've built my life around creating stability from chaos. I've lost before. I will not lose my daughter. Amara stepped up next. I have a letter, she said, pointing a folded page from her coat, written by Celeste, addressed to her daughter, Clara, when she was only days old. The courtroom hushed. She read aloud. If this letter ever reaches you, my sweet girl, know that I loved you from the moment I knew you existed. I dreamed of the family you'd have, and I prayed the man who gave you life would one day find you and give you the world you deserved. Tears filled Nicholas's eyes. Clara reached for Amara's hand, gripping it tightly. The judge leaned forward. This changes the emotional framework of the case. I will need time to review everything. The gavel came down, court adjourned, ruling delayed. Nicholas closed his eyes, devastated. And in that suspended moment, while emotions ran high and hope hung by a thread, a woman in a gray coat stormed into the courtroom with forged documents and attempted to escort Clara away. Stop! Amara's voice rang across the courtroom as Clara recoiled in fear. The woman in the gray coat gripped the girl's wrist too tightly, waving a stack of papers and insisting, I have temporary custody, signed by Judge Hall. But Judge Marino, who had presided over the earlier hearing, stood from the bench, frowning deeply. This case falls under my jurisdiction. Who authorized this transfer? The woman froze. Nicholas stepped forward, his presence commanding. Where's your supervisor? He asked calmly, but with steel in his tone. A bailiff moved to intercept the woman, taking the documents from her and inspecting them. This signature doesn't match the official on file, he said. These are forged. Chaos erupted. Clara clung to Amara, shaking. The woman was quickly escorted out under suspicion of attempting to kidnap a minor. Nicholas wrapped his arms protectively around both Amara and Clara, holding them tightly as the courtroom emptied. Later that night, back at the penthouse, Clara curled up beside Amara on the couch, silent but no longer trembling. Nicholas brought her a warm mug of chamomile tea and sat across from them, watching the two most important people in his life breathe as one. Failed her, he whispered, breaking the silence. Failed Celeste. Failed Clara. I let them both slip through my fingers. You didn't fail, Amara said, looking up. You're here now, and you fought for her. Clara nodded softly. You're not like the others. You didn't let them take me. That moment cracked something open in Nicholas. For so long he had carried guilt like armor, never forgiving himself for Celeste's disappearance. But now, seeing Clara's trust, hearing Amara's quiet certainty, he let it fall, piece by piece. In the following days, Nicholas doubled security, His legal team launched a full investigation into how the forged custody order had been filed. Meanwhile, Amara took on the role of mother in every way but name, braiding her to sleep and guiding her through nightmares when they returned. The court case gained media attention, headlines ranging from "Tycoon Fights for Secret Daughter" to "Tragedy, Legacy, and the Lost Vance Heir." Nicholas shielded Clara from the worst of it, but he could see the toll it took on Amara. "You're exhausted," he said one night, catching her wiping tears in the hallway. She nodded. "Not from her, never from her, but I keep thinking, what if they win? What if some loophole lets them take her again?" Nicholas took her hands in his. "They won't, not while I'm alive." A few days later, Judge Moreno called an emergency session. "This court has reviewed all relevant testimony, letters, DNA evidence, and the attempted removal of the minor Clara. It is clear that Clara is the biological daughter of Nicholas Vance and the late Celeste Morin." Nicholas's breath caught. The judge continued, "Given the child's exquisite bond with both Mr. Vance and Miss Amara Marin, and in light of the dangers she's already faced, this court grants Mr. Vance full legal guardianship, with Amara Marin as her appointed co-guardian." Gasps echoed. Amara turned to Nicholas, stunned. "Co-guardian?" He smiled, eyes damp. "I asked for it. Clara needs both of us." The gavel struck. Outside, the press swarmed, but it was Clara's voice that cut through everything as she squeezed Amara's hand and whispered, "Mama?" Amara's heart nearly stopped. She looked at Nicholas, who nodded. Amara bent down to Clara's level. "Yes, baby, I'm here." And this time, no one could take her away. The morning sun filtered through the frosted windows of the social worker's office as Clara sat between Nicola and Amara, her small hands folded tightly in her lap. She hadn't spoken much since the DNA confirmation. She seemed hesitant, like a bird ready to fly at the first sudden movement. But when Amara gently reached for her hand, Clara didn't pull away. "Be used to him." "To me," Clara finally said, her voice low. "The woman in my dreams. The song was always the same." Amara smiled softly. "She left us. That was your mother's lullaby." Clara nodded, her chin quivering. "I believed she was real, even when they said she wasn't." Nicola felt something twist in his chest. "She was very real, and she loved you with everything she had." Later that afternoon, Nicholas took Clara to his penthouse for the first time. She wandered the rooms with wide eyes, amazed but reserved. Amara joined them for dinner, and it was there, over warm plates of pasta, that Clara opened up again. "Favorite color is seafoam green. And I like stars," she said quietly, twirling noodles with her fork. Nicholas grinned. "I'll have to get you a telescope." She smiled, then turned to Amara. "Can I sit beside you?" Amara nodded, her heart aching with a love that had bloomed so quickly it startled her. When Clara rested her head on Amara's shoulder afterward, Nicholas realized something profound. His daughter had instinctively chosen her guardian heart first. Over the next week, Nicholas worked tirelessly with his legal team to prepare for the guardianship petition. Amara supported him every step of the way, helping Clara adjust to her new routine, guiding her through unfamiliar hallways and big city noise with a protective warmth that never felt forced. Then the challenge came. At the first court hearing, a surprise objection was filed by none other than Nicholas's uncle, Malcolm Vance, a man who hadn't been in contact with Nicholas in over a decade, but who now claimed that he should be Clara's legal guardian due to family estate succession interests. Nicholas' jaw clenched. This is about control. He doesn't care about Clara. "She wants her trust fund and the Vance name under his thumb," Amara said sharply. Their lawyer agreed. "He's claiming her birthright entitles him to shape her future. If he proves Nicholas is emotionally compromised, he could delay custody indefinitely." In the courtroom, Clara sat with Amara, her legs swinging beneath the bench. Malcolm's lawyers argued that Nicholas's past trauma made him unstable. They pointed to the years he spent overseas, the therapy he'd undergone, and even pulled out a tabloid article from years ago, claiming he was mentally unfit, after his father's public scandal. But Nicholas stood calmly. "I've built my life around creating stability from chaos. I've lost before. I will not lose my daughter." Amara stepped up next. "A letter," she said, pulling a folded page from her coat. "Written by Celeste, addressed to her daughter, Clara, when she was only days old." The courtroom hushed. She read aloud, "If this letter ever reaches you, my sweet girl, know that I loved you from the moment I knew you existed. I dreamed of the family you'd have, and I prayed the man who gave you life would one day find you and give you the world you deserved." Tears filled Nicholas's eyes. Clara reached for Amara's hand, gripping it tightly. The judge leaned forward. "This changes the emotional framework of the case. I will need time to review everything." The gavel came down. Court adjourned. Ruling delayed. Nicholas closed his eyes, devastated. And in that suspended moment, while emotions ran high and hope hung by a thread, a woman in a gray coat stormed into the courtroom with forged documents and attempted to escort Clara away. "Stop!" Amara's voice rang across the courtroom as Clara recoiled in fear. The woman in the gray coat gripped the girl's wrist too tightly, waving a stack of papers and insisting, "I have temporary custody," signed by Judge Hall. But Judge Moreno, who had presided over the earlier hearing, stood from the bench, frowning deeply. "This case falls under my jurisdiction. Who authorized this transfer?" The woman froze. Nicholas stepped forward, his presence commanding. "Where's your supervisor?" he asked calmly but with steel in his tone. A bailiff moved to intercept the woman, taking the documents from her and inspecting them. "This signature doesn't match the official on file," he said. "These are forged." Chaos erupted. Clara clung to Amara, shaking. The woman was quickly escorted out, under suspicion of attempting to kidnap a minor. Nicholas wrapped his arms protectively around both Amara and Clara, holding them tightly as the courtroom emptied. Later that night, back at the penthouse, Clara curled up beside Amara on the couch, silent but no longer trembling. Nicholas brought her a warm mug of chamomile tea and sat across from them, watching the two most important people in his life breathe as one. "Failed her," he whispered, breaking the silence. "Failed Celeste, failed Clara. I let them both slip through my fingers." "You didn't fail," Amara said, looking up. "You're here now, and you fought for her." Clara nodded softly. "You're not like the others. You didn't let them take me." That moment cracked something open in Nicholas. For so long he had carried guilt like armor, never forgiving himself for Celeste's disappearance. But now, seeing Clara's trust, hearing Amara's quiet certainty, he let it fall, piece by piece. In the following days, Nicholas doubled security. His legal team launched a full investigation into how the forged custody order had been filed. Meanwhile, Amara took on the role of mother in every way but name, braiding Clara's hair in the mornings, singing her to sleep, and guiding her through nightmares when they returned. The court case gained media attention, headlines ranging from "Tycoon Fights for Secret Daughter" to "Tragedy, Legacy, and the Lost Vance Heir." Nicholas shielded Clara from the worst of it, but he could see the toll it took on Amara. "You're exhausted," he said one night, catching her wiping tears in the hallway. She nodded. "Not from her, never from her. But I keep thinking, what if they win? What if some loophole lets them take her again?" Nicholas took her hands in his. "They won't? Not while I'm alive?" A few days later, Judge Moreno called an emergency session. "Court has reviewed all relevant testimony, letters, DNA evidence, and the attempted removal of the minor Clara. It is clear that Clara is the biological daughter of Nicholas Vance and the late Celeste Marin." Nicholas's breath caught. The judge continued. "Given the child's excriptly with both Mr. Vance and with Ms. Amara Marin, and in light of the dangers she's already faced, this court grants Mr. Vance full legal guardianship, with Amara Marin as her appointed co-guardian." Gasps echoed. Amara turned to Nicholas, stunned. "Co-guardian?" He smiled, eyes damp. "I asked for it. Clara needs both of us." The gavel struck. Outside, the press swarmed. But it was Clara's voice that cut through everything as she squeezed Amara's hand and whispered, "Mama?" Amara's heart nearly stopped. She looked at Nicholas, who nodded. Amara bent down to Clara's level. "Yes, baby, I'm here." And this time, no one could take her away. The rain came down lightly outside the window of the penthouse, the city's skyline veiled in gray. Amara stood by the glass, her arms wrapped around herself, eyes tracking the quiet movements of Clara as she colored on the floor. There had been peace these past few days, calm after the chaos, but it felt borrowed, like a lull between two storms. Nicholas entered the room quietly. In his hand was a small, velvet box. Amara turned. "You're holding that like it's radioactive." He managed a soft smile. "Maybe it is." He walked toward her, his voice steady but low. "I've spoken with my lawyers. Even with joint guardianship, there's still a loophole, someone could contest it. But if we were married, legally, Clara would be protected from any future custody disputes. Fully and forever." Amara's breath caught. "Marriage?" Her voice trembled. "You mean for Clara's sake?" "Hate you so." But then his voice dipped. "And not just for her, for you, for me." He stepped closer. "I've been trying to find the right words, but the truth is, every time I look at you, I don't see Celeste. I see the woman who walked into my life and brought my daughter home, who fought for her like she was already yours, who healed something in me I didn't know was still bleeding." Tears sprang to Amara's eyes, but she shook her head. "You're not thinking clearly. This is trauma bonding, Nicholas. You're just great." Clara's quiet voice interrupted from behind them. "Don't let them take me." Amara turned. The little girl had abandoned her drawings, standing there clutching her worn teddy bear. Her eyes were wide, pleading. "Please, I want us to stay together." Nicholas kneeled and opened the box. Inside sat a simple gold band. "I'm not offering a fairy tale," he said gently, "but I'm offering us a future, safe, together." Amara looked from the ring to the girl, and then back to the man who once felt like a stranger and now felt like home. "Time," she whispered. Nicholas nodded. "You have it." But time was a luxury they didn't get to savor. That weekend, an anonymous tip claimed Clara was still under threat. CPS requested another review. Nicholas and Amara didn't wait. The courthouse was nearly empty on Monday morning, except for a clerk, a judge, and two people who had faced too many battles in too short a time. Amara stood in a cream blouse and a long blue skirt, her hair swept back in a simple braid. Nicholas wore a navy suit, but it was the emotion in his eyes, not the cut of the jacket, that made her heart twist. Clara sat with a social worker in the pew behind them, her small hands clutching the bear tighter than ever. The ceremony was brief. No rings were exchanged, no music played, but when the judge asked if they entered this union freely, Amara looked into Nicholas's eyes and found something steady, anchoring. She nodded. "I do," Nicholas echoed. And it was done. Outside, the air was warmer than it had been in weeks. Clara ran to them and wrapped her arms around both their legs. "We're really a family now?" Nicholas knelt. "Yes, sweetheart, you're safe, and we're staying together, no matter what." That night, back at Amara's apartment, still filled with books and quiet corners, Clara curled up in her lap as Nicholas made tea in the kitchen. Amara gently rocked her. "You okay, baby?" Clara yawned. "Happy?" Then she blinked. "Aunt Amara, I found something." She slid off her lap and darted into the back room. A few minutes later, she returned with a small, dusty music box Amara didn't recognize. It had been tucked behind old novels in the shop's donation pile, unnoticed. "He played a song," Clara said. Then, a voice. Amara's brow furrowed. She opened the lid. A soft lullaby filled the room. Delicate notes of a tune Amara hadn't heard in years, Celeste's lullaby. And then, a voice worn and hesitant, but unmistakably hers. "You're hearing this? Then it means my daughter is alive, and that someone kind found her. I couldn't protect her the way I wanted, but I hope, oh, I pray, that you will, that you'll tell her I loved her, that I never meant to leave, and if Nicholas is out there, Tell him I forgave him. Long before the end. Amara's hand trembled as she closed the box. She looked at Nicholas, who had frozen mid-step, the teacup in his hand rattling against the saucer. Clara crawled into her lap again, resting her head on Amara's chest. She sounds like you? Nicholas sat beside them and reached for both of their hands. She sounds like hope. In that moment, no past wounds remained between them, only the warmth of what they still had and what they could still build. The music box sat quietly on the windowsill now, its silver casing catching the soft light of morning. Nicholas had placed it there purposefully, where it could shine, where Celeste's voice could linger in the air like a benediction over their new beginning. The message had played again that morning. Clara had asked to hear it one more time. The moment Celeste's voice whispered, "If you're hearing this, you found her. Protect her." Amara saw something shift in the girl's eyes. A light, a calm, a recognition that she was finally safe. The court hearing 2 days later was swift but emotional. The judge, after hearing testimonies from Amara, Nicholas, the social worker, and even Clara's school counselor, ruled in favor of permanent custody. The family member who had once tried to take Clara was absenced by public scrutiny and the undeniable evidence of what Clara needed most: love. Amara clutched Nicholas's hand as the judge's gavel came down. Full custody is awarded to Nicholas and Amara Vance. The courtroom seemed to exhale in that moment. Clara threw her arms around both of them. "Does this mean I don't have to go anywhere else?" Nicholas knelt, tears in his eyes. "No, baby. You're home now, forever." Amara kissed the top of Clara's head and whispered, "You are our daughter?" They didn't throw a party. Instead, they celebrated quietly, in the way Amara and Celeste always had, by opening the bookstore to the neighborhood children and read aloud stories of bravery, kindness, and lost things that find their way home. A week later, Amara stood outside the shop with Nicholas, a new sign wrapped in brown cloth leaning against the wall. Together, they peeled back the fabric to reveal the hand-carved wood beneath. "To lazed light," it read. Amara swallowed a lump in her throat. She used to say stories were how we left breadcrumbs for each other. This place, it was always her dream. Nicholas wrapped an arm around her waist. Now it's her legacy. They brought Clara outside. She squinted at the sign and smiled wide. "It's beautiful." Inside, the shop had been rearranged. Amara had cleared a whole corner for children's books, complete with a soft rug and tiny bean bags. Nicholas had added a new shelf labeled Letters and Light, where memoirs and found family tales now live. And on the checkout counter, Clara had placed the music box, now wrapped in a ribbon, with a small note taped to it in her careful handwriting. "And my first mama, who loved me, and my second mama, who found me." The days passed gently after that. Nicholas still worked in venture deals, but he now spent his mornings helping set up the bookstore's inventory system. Amara ran the front counter and curated the reading selections, her fingers dancing across titles like old friends. Clara came in after school every day and took her favorite spot by the window. There, she'd draw pictures of the stories she read, or sometimes just their family. One afternoon, Amara came across a new drawing. 3 stick figures stood beneath a big tree. One wore a blue dress, another had brown hair and glasses. The smallest wore pink and held both hands. Scrawled at the top in red crayon were the words, "By Clara Vance." Amara blinked through sudden tears. Clara had chosen her name. No one had asked her to. She had claimed it freely, proudly. Amara folded the drawing gently and placed it in the small wooden box where she kept their little milestones. Clara's first note, Nicholas's scribbled proposal on a receipt, and now, Clara's chosen name. She glanced toward the reading nook where Nicholas sat with Clara, a hardcover fairy tale open between them. Clara's head rested against his shoulder, her eyes fluttering between the words and the sound of his voice. Nicholas read slowly, thoughtfully, his tone soothing and full of wonder. Every now and then, Clara would stop him with a question or a giggle, and Amara, watching from behind the counter, felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the fragile kind that trembles on the edge of being broken, but the kind built slowly, intentionally, layered in trust and held together by the courage to try again. As the story came to an end, Nicholas closed the book and looked up at her. "We're thinking of starting a weekly story hour." "Clara's idea," he added, nudging the little girl. Clara sat up straighter. "I want other kids to feel safe here too, like I do." Amara knelt beside her. "Then that's exactly what we'll do." That evening, after they closed up the store and washed the teacups from the final guests, the three of them walked hand in hand to the beach near the harbor. The sun had dipped behind the horizon, leaving streaks of lavender and gold across the sky. A breeze rolled in off the water, carrying the scent of salt and wildflowers. Nicholas stopped near a stone bench carved with initials. "She used to bring you here, didn't she?" he asked softly. Amara nodded. "When things were hard, Celeste would sit here and read to me. She said the ocean was honest. It never pretended to be calm when it wasn't." They sat in silence for a while, letting the waves speak. Then Clara asked, "Do you think Mama Celeste can see us?" Amara looked up at the sky. "I do, and I think she's proud of you. Of us." Nicholas reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the last envelope Celeste had written, the one Amara hadn't dared open until now. Together, they unfolded it. Inside was a single sheet. "The family I dreamed of," it read. "If you found each other, then everything I lost was worth it. Let love be louder than fear. Let light be stronger than silence." Tears slid down Amara's cheeks. Nicholas closed his eyes, holding both her and Clara tightly. That night, as Clara drifted to sleep under a sky full of stars, Amara lay beside her, brushing back her curls. Nicholas stood in the doorway, watching. "Do you believe in second chances?" she whispered. He stepped into the room and kissed her forehead. "I do. Because you gave me mine." The final scene opened the next morning, sun streaming through the wide windows of the bookstore. Children's laughter echoed softly as the first story hour began. Clara handed out juice boxes, while Nicholas greeted a local librarian who offered extra books. Amara stood near the counter, her heart swelling as she watched them both. She turned to the shop window just as Clara taped her newest drawing to the glass. It showed 3 people under a book-shaped tree. Family tree, and the caption read, "And beneath it, by Nicholas Vance." In the golden light of morning, surrounded by stories, healing, and the voices of the next generation, they had become what Celeste had once hoped for. Not just a family, a legacy, a home. And as the final frame faded, one last message lingered on the screen. "Leaves a mark on the soul. It always finds its way home."